it's great to have you here, and congratulations on your book, Fountain of Diamonds. This is a two-part question.
Yeah.
What is Fountain of Diamonds about, and what inspired you to write it?
Well, I'll answer the back part first. I've always been looking to write a novel ever since school and so forth, and then over a period of time I had an attempt at a novel called In the Hands of Few, which was science fiction and so forth like that. And Susie Quayle, I think, is here. And Susie is a journalist, and she was writing at that time, or coming towards the end of her career in writing for a medical magazine at one stage. And I thought, look, I'll get Susie to have a look at this book. And I think Susie was wise enough to be a close family friend to say, look, I don't really want to criticise this work, so I'll pass it on to this friend of hers who's a bit of an expert. And she looked at it for a bit and then came back and said, look, cut a long story short, this is rubbish. and I kind of realised that, it's because there was plenty of just, I don't know if people know the Japanese industry at all. They have these rooms where they have, blow-ups of your boss, and you can go in there and beat them with a stick, Well, that's what that book became for me. All my frustration in corporate life, I just put it into this book, and it was totally disjointed. So eventually, I wanted to do something better, but I had the imagination but not the skill. So I did a lot of short stories and so forth like that. Some I tried to get published and whatever. So over a period of time. And then in the inspiration, because you can want to write a story, but it's then what gives you the inspiration. And I don't know what it was, but just that plaque last year in Tahiti about the nuclear testing just triggered something in me, and I just went back to the motel and I wrote on a pad, The Mystery of Mururoa. So.
Okay. Well, what information did you find when you delved into the history of the nuclear testing in French Polynesia, and what was your emotional reaction?
Yeah, it was sort of interesting because what I perceived to be the concept of the Mystery of Mururoa dramatically changed as I started to delve into things about the testing. I had a memory of it, but like a lot of people had forgotten about it because time had moved on, and obviously the people who were the perpetrators wanted people to forget. And as you dug into it more, you found out the extent of the testing, 193 tests over 30 years, which was quite significant. And then you find out the two last tests, that even after it was agreed there'd be a worldwide treaty, Jacques Chirac agreed, or whether it was under pressure or for whatever reason, to conduct two last tests. And this is after they'd already signed, and this was after the treaty coming in the middle of 1996. So that was all quite astounding. And then you dug into the impacts, the story of Lena Cross, who has gone to the UN. She's an elected official for French Polynesia. The fact that the French have never apologised. The fact that the compensation is ludicrous and very hard to get. The number of people who receive compensation. The amount of proven cancers that are as a result. So the more you dug into it, the more you sort of thought, why would the President of France incur the wrath of the world after they've agreed to sign a treaty for no testing to do two last tests? You can't tell me after 191 tests you haven't got it right, right? And that was a question at the Tahiti launch that people, who were mainly Americans, asked. And they said, so why do you think they needed two more tests? And I said, well, have you ever driven a French car, right? I mean, they can't make a car with an automatic gearbox that works, so they just constantly got to try and get things right. But anyway, I've had a fair bit of a go at the French in the book, so there you go. So there's a lot more to it as you dug into it.
Right. How much of Fountain of Diamonds is based on fact and how much is fiction?
Okay. There's an element of fact in there because the things that are referred to in terms of DGSE, which hopefully I've got that right, with Sam's around. Is that right? I think so. Yeah, okay. Because I got that confused in one of the drafts, right? Because that's the Director General of security exterior is the French department, otherwise like our ASIO. So that department is real. Things to do with the testing in terms of the monitoring is real, like when it's stated in the book about 20 sensors and only 11 are working, that's all true. INSERM, which is the French government medical department or organisation that was supposedly independently reviewing the testing and making sure that the fallout and all those things weren't they're real. So there's a lot of stuff that is the island that is owned by Philippe Mercier exists, and is actually owned by a French billionaire, but who owns Circus du Soleil, I think it is, right? So, but I've had, he's not that. He's not Philippe Mercier. Let's just make that clear, right? So yeah, there's a lot that's intertwined into it. So it's very much historical fiction in that sense.
When writing about real events and real places, how important was it to you to make sure that the story sounded authentic and was factually accurate?
It had to be believable, right? It had to be something where people would go, oh, come on, I mean, you're pulling my leg there, right? And that's why I guess in the introduction to the book, I made the statement about the testing and the extra testing that was done at the end, and why would you incur the wrath of that and things like that. And then later in the author's notes refer to, what happened and the fact that the Rainbow Warrior was bombed, right? I mean, and the people that were arrested, who disgustingly were sent to prison for 7 and 10 years, but through the French negotiating with the UN, got transferred to Hoi Atoll, the administrative testing site, where they served just 2 years and they were let free, right? And nobody from the French government has ever been prosecuted. So all of that set the tone to say, and there's other things I could say, which I'm not going to say because it gives too much away about the story, right? But there's that just sent the message that if they were prepared to do that, bomb Rainbow Warrior in New Zealand, an allied country during the Second World War that had helped rid the Nazis and free France. I don't know too many other countries that would do that to an ally, perhaps the United States, but if they do it, they certainly don't mess it up as much as that, so everybody knows, right? So it just sort of lent credence to the fact that this could possibly be the case. So,
what sort of research did you have to do before writing Fountain of Diamonds? Because the story has so many elements, from various geographical locations to diamond mining and joint venture mining to nuclear testing in French Polynesia, radiation and contamination, politics, missing people. Where do you even start with compiling and linking everything together?
Well, I guess the reason why the science fiction novel was so crap was because it was all imagination and creativity and no structure, right? So I credit my move into the consulting world and doing research as part of that and writing research reports as benefiting this novel. If I hadn't done what I'm doing now, I don't think I would have been as disciplined, right? And I had a very good mentor going into consulting, Toby Ford, whose funeral I just went to on Monday. 88 years of age, Toby, and he was still at his desk, doing his final research, And Toby taught me a few things when I went into consulting. Firstly, don't be so verbose, because I was. I think my brother Brian, if he's here or is still stuck at Jesmond, he used to, because he got me into BHP, because he was already in there, so he helped me in my career there. But he said to people, my brother can talk the leg off a dead kangaroo, right? It took me a while to work out what that actually meant, but I figured it's a long leg, so it would take you a long time to eat it, right? So Toby taught me to be not so verbose. He's very good at English, so he He said to me, in this life of consulting, you write for your life. If you write a proposal, you have to convince the client that you understand what the client wants. You've got to convince the client that you have methodology that's going to get you to the answer, and you've got to be able to wrap that up in what you're going to deliver for them. If you don't do that effectively, you won't get a job. You don't get a job, you don't get paid. And then the research, you know, he had a very structured way of doing research. He had a research file. It had chapters in it, chapters that would gather the evidence, gather the data, and would work its way through from the beginning to a sensible conclusion. So when you write a research report and you've got all this data in there, it's all been collected, it's all been put together in a fashion that's then going to be the structure of the report, and then the conclusion that you draw at the end has to fit with the research you did, right? So when I did the first draft of this, it wasn't a full draft, it was just a story outline. And then I started doing more research, created the folder, created the chapters, and as I did more research, more things came to light which changed the story. But I didn't really write the first draft till I had my research folder finished, and it changed a lot of the direction.
Yeah, that's a great idea, having all that research together, because I think you can just start writing and then go, oh, actually all this is wrong, scrapped, and have to start again.
Yeah, see, all you do by writing like I did before is satisfy my creative need to get something that I look, oh, geez, doesn't that great, that description of that table, it's magnificent, and da, da, da. Yeah, but where's the table fit into the friggin' story, right? So you can do all this stuff that satisfies your creative, but it doesn't make sense to the reader, and it doesn't fit into the plot, so to speak.
Well, did you speak to locals or experts in certain fields to assist you?
I did a lot of, I didn't speak to people, but I did a lot of research, and you know, the thing of Fountain of Diamonds, which some people might know what that means in geographical or geological terms, and my brother, who over here is a geologist, who read the book, who didn't know anything about it because I kept it quiet, because things like this is plenty of people say, oh, I'll write a book one day and da 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 da, and then never get around to it. So I just wanted to do it and then, you know, say, well, it's done or it's not done, sort of thing. But Ross, as a geologist, has read the book and the stuff that I did about the geology. He said, no, that's all quite sound. He said, that's geologically correct, and that's quite possible.
He's an expert.
Yeah.
Not sure about the atoll.
Yeah. No, not that part, but I mean the concept of it. Yeah. So scientifically, from that point of view, it was. But I did a lot of in the research. There's a lot of papers that are there, and as you dig and follow the path the plot might take, you just dig out more and more. I mean, you could bury yourself in the thing infinitum, right? So yeah, that's.
The thing is too, the more people you ask that will tell about the fact that you're writing a story, they'll go, oh, what's it about? Oh, you should do this. You should do this.
Yes.
And then your whole story changes because everyone's putting their 2 cents worth in. So it's probably good that you started doing it on your own and
then sort the input
Yes.
as it's, you know, and with a group, selective group at that stage. Yeah.
Did you encounter anything surprising during your research or when you were looking into doing the book?
Yeah, there was bits and pieces. You know, I suppose the extent of the impact on Tahiti I had no idea about, and the population of French Polynesia at the beginning, and subsequently on the Facebook page I've put things in there that have linked to an organisation called Disclose, who are referred to in the book as Expose, right? And they have produced a magnificent documentary on YouTube, which is also co-authored by or co-produced by Princeton University, which showed the fallout and the disastrous nature of some of the explosions that the French conducted. And on that point, you know, I'll say, when I was in Tahiti at the launch, as a tourist, you don't get involved in these things, and Tahiti and the French Polynesia are all very happy people, and da 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 da. Once they saw me walking around the streets with my T-shirt promoting this launch and so forth, and like, oh, you know, oh, you know, the guy who manages the marina in Tahiti. I said, I just want to put this up because you've got all these yachties coming in, they might want something to do. And he goes, oh, what's it? And he said, oh, I said, this is about Muriara. Oh, yes, he said, that's terrible. He said, come in here, put it on the noseboard. Oh, this stuff here is rubbish. We'll put that right in the middle. You know, he said, is there alcohol? You know? And I said, oh, yes, there's drink, because yachties, you know what they're like, you know. So that, and then the guy who's the head of the tourism for Muriara, not Muriara, but Moorea, his insights were extraordinary because he said, this is a big problem here. And Oscar Timur, I think his name is, who was who was the president in 2006, who commissioned the plaque, right? Now it's a French collective, so it's like Northern Territory. It's still very much a domain of the French, right? But they have their own collective government. He's a local indigenous Tahitian. He fought against the testing for years, and he put that plaque there, right? The guy from Moorea Tourism knows him. He sponsored Lena Cross to go to the UN. When you dig below the surface, there's a lot of resentment. And what he said is, look, the Americans did a lot of damage in the Marshall Islands, but he said two fundamental differences. One, they did 50 tests and they gave it away because they were doing too much damage. Secondly, they apologised for the damage they did. Thirdly, they gave 300 million in compensation at the time, right? The French, not one French president has ever apologised, and the compensation to date is abysmal. They are pissed.
Do you think they will apologise at some point?
They're French.
So the answer is no. No. How long did it take you to write Fountain of Diamonds?
I suppose, like, I'll talk in consulting terms now. I'll say in elapsed time, a bit over a year. In total hours, this is including all the reworks and blah, 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 probably 300 hours, including the research. So, look, I was surprised that plaque just triggered something, you know.
One small thing.
Yeah, you know. And look, I mightn't get an inspiration to write another novel again, right? Mind you, I'll make more money out of one research report than I'll do out of this thing in a lifetime. But the reality of it is, you know, you can have a desire, and you can have a bit of talent, and who knows, you know, the world make up its decision as to how good or bad this thing is. But there's got to be that thing that lights a flame, you know. I mean, you know that because you've studied writing and you've written your own book. If you don't have that one thing, you can start it, and then, like the guy who won the Booker Prize recently said, he started writing this book about this Hungarian, I think, immigrant or whatever, and he just gave it away. If you don't have the thing that's passion to drive you through, you can have all the great ideas under the sun, but without the inspiration to follow it through, it's not going to work. And I don't know what it was, but this thing just clicked.
Well, it worked. Did you have a writing routine to keep you going?
I suppose the writing routine, and this comes from the discipline of report writing, I suppose came from all of that structure about original outline, character development. Character development came in parts, in stages. As you did more research, more characters came to mind. And then as I got a lot of that together, then I started writing. And then as I started getting through, I realised I needed more characters, and then you go back and da-da-da-da-da. So it was like writing a report, because you think you've got all the research, and you start writing to fulfil the requirement of the research, and then you realise you've got a gap. And so you've got to go back. So that's kind of how I did the first draft, right? So that if that's a routine, that was very much around the discipline of research writing.
Well, you know, talking about characters, can you tell us about some of your main characters in Fountain of Diamonds and why they're so important to the story? And I want to start with Robert Tate. And just a side note, okay, I noticed that Robert Tate is a PI based in Soldiers Point. Was that a conscious decision to localise your character to Port Stephens?
Well, you've done good research, but I never knew that, right? Actually, well, that might be something I'll pinch, you know. No, Robert Tate as a character name is something that's been around in my head for a long time. You know, like if you've written short stories and you've had ideas on things, you have these character names and you park them, and maybe I might use that one day. And I didn't know whether Robert Tate would eventually come to life as a private investigator, as a you know, drunken divorced detective, which seems to be popular these days. You know, or something I didn't know. But I guess the Robert Tate became who he became because of people like what's his name, Thomas Headley, you know, and the podcast, the whole podcast thing, and podcast being modern, and it being very much the thing these days. So he's always around. He was always going to be a nosy body of some kind. Just what his career was something that was to be determined. But the podcast thing really sort of made him a journalist.
Well, I also noticed that Robert Tate hates Air New Zealand, and he mentions it at least a couple of times. Is that a reflection on your view of the airline?
Well, as you know, the book does talk about revenge. You know, there's a certain, and yes, that was part of the experience of going to Tahiti, the bastards. Now, at the end of the day, they might, you know, if it becomes a worldwide bestseller, which it won't, and they get offended by it, well, I've got the legal documents that I was going to sue the bastards with, right? So I figure at the end of the day, if they're not going to cough up, well, I'll write a book that's... there you go.
Now, can you tell us about Philip Mercier, billionaire diamond miner? Give us a bit of a...
Yeah, well, yeah, and then sort of got to be, yeah, got to be clever, not clever. I've got to be careful in the sense that there's an element in there about, well, why were the two explosions done? You know, what was it they found, right? And that research led to, you know, what was the possible commodity, you know, the resource. And then that, I don't know how it led me to the Congo, right? But when you look into the mining and mining resources and so forth, and you look into the history of mining in the, you know, you go to Africa, right? Because that's where certain resources come from. And then you look at the different countries, and you look at who is involved in those countries, and you discover the French Congo, and then that leads to, well, what's the history of mining in the Congo, and who was involved, and who owns all the money in the Congo? And it's the French, you know. And in the French Congo, it was the centre of government for Charles de Gaulle during the Second World War. You discover these things and you go, okay, well, Mercier is definitely, that's where his family wealth and heritage comes from. So I built on that.
You need someone that, you know, you can sort of expand on and tie everything together. And also, I'm halfway through the book and he hasn't even appeared yet. So is he going to appear?
Yeah, yes, and there's a significant reason why he doesn't.
Okay,
you know?
so we'll find out.
Yes.
There you go, no spoilers.
Yes, yes.
Now, you've also got some powerful female characters in your book, such as Fia and, do you say Adeline or Adeline?
Adeline, yeah.
Was that a conscious decision, and did you try to get into the mind of a female when you wrote?
Well, that would be impossible, but I got asked this question not so long ago about, you know, why was Fia and female and so forth like that. And there was a number of reasons. Subconsciously, the character Fia was always going to be female. And I think the influences around that were the fact that I live in a household of three strong, independent females, right? And secondly, as I researched the background of the whole thing, the characters like Hina Cross, female, right, and others who are not complaining, but are advocating for proper compensation. It's more the women in Tahiti who are doing this, who are doing the heavy lifting. You know, a lot of the men, you know, were the big protesters and the activists at the time, but they've not sustained the fight. And Hina Cross is really a person to admire. So that's why.
Which character did you enjoy writing the most and why?
I like Larry Myers, right? Because Larry's just a dickhead, right? And he's American, you know. I don't want to. Yeah, but I don't want to offend my American. You know, he's American Silicon Valley type person, you know. So he was someone I could have a bit of fun with, right? And just his sort of rudeness, his offhandedness, he's actually loosely based on the character in Independence Day, you know, who runs around in the office there, you know, with Jeff Bloomberg, and he's hiding under the desk. Oh, is it really going to, you know, crazy, you know, they're really going to invade? No. One of those sorts of guys, you know. So I had a bit of fun with Larry. So,
are there any of your characters based on or linked to real people?
Well, some people are saying there's a bit of, you know, me and Robert Tate, which is just ludicrous, right? Look, I guess there's always some elements of people in some of those characters when you think about them. I remember reading the book, The Man Behind James Bond, Ian Fleming, right? And he talked about his characters, or the book talked about characters and how they changed names around, and they're kind of loosely based on some people. And so when you're thinking about some characters, and A, their names, and B, what roles they're playing, like Ken Varley. Is Ken here? Yes. There's an AFP officer in the book, right? And his name is Nathan Yardley. Well, Ken's son is an AFP officer. In fact, now he's the Commissioner of Correctional Services Northern Territory. Not the last one, he's the one fixing the mess. And his name was Matthew Varley. So Nathan Yardley seemed to fit that perfectly, right? And I had a few dealings with Matthew, and I think the way I've described him in the book is reasonably accurate, I think. So there you go, you know. But no, all people in the book are fictional, right?
Well, Adeline Cabin, her last name and elements of her background suggest that she could be Christine Cabin's daughter, the French spy who infiltrated Greenpeace and passed on information that enabled her colleagues to bomb the Rainbow Warrior in 1985. Is that...
I won't confirm or deny that, right? Because that's integral to the plot. But sometimes the people you can't trust are hiding in plain sight.
Okay, so true. Why choose the title Fountain of Diamonds, and was it decided at the start or the end of your novel?
Well, it came out of the research, and the name means something which I can't give away, because as you get into it towards the end, you realise why it has that title. Originally, it was The Mystery of Mururoa. But when I did the research, this particular title was the one that sort of hit me and said that's what it's got to be. And Mystery of Mururoa probably, you know, defined it too closely. Fountain of Diamonds opens it up, and then also, you know, the word diamonds gets good Googles, you know.
That's good thinking. That's very good thinking. So you finished Fountain of Diamonds. What came next as far as finding someone to publish it?
Yeah, I and you've been through this exercise. Yeah, you know how dodgy it can be. You know, you know, and in this world of, you know, indie publishing, like I sent it off to some of the publishers. I did the HarperCollins Friday submission, you know, knowing full well you won't hear anything, right? Plus, I'm a 60-year-old white guy, so I'm not really that popular these days. And so I sort of looked around for, you know, the indie sort of side of things, because I read a bit about that, did some research on those sorts of companies, and found Greenhill Publishing and you know, explored conversations with them till I felt that they were what they were. And then when you look at some of the people that have published through them, like Shane Watson, I mean, he's a decent guy. His wife's a journalist, right? So he couldn't necessarily be led up the garden path. And I just found them very, very good, very genuine, because there are those ones that you know of that say they're Australian, but they're not. They're either based in the US or they're based wherever, and you don't have regular contact with them. You can't, you know, it's very difficult, and that can sort of just be the ruination. Yeah, the ruination. These guys were very good, and everything they said they would do, and their reviews are good. There's a lot of dodgies, but I'd highly recommend them.
Fantastic. Well, you chose to launch your book in Tahiti first. Why was that so important to you, and what was the response like? It
was well, I have to thank my sponsor firstly. CTC Consulting Group has been an excellent sponsor of this whole exercise, and really I couldn't have done this without them, right? So the reason for doing it in Tahiti was two things. One is because it gave the inspiration, right? And I felt that the more you dug into it, there was a real purpose to go there and launch it there. The other thing about it was, you know, learning from our past experience of being there, that, you know, the Hilton, which we stayed at and features in the book and all the rest of it, is a transient hotel where people come from cruises and other places, and a lot of Americans. So I figure, you know, like, Americans by the pool, have a chat with them, talk about coming in, and, you know, and they could go out and be disciples, because, you know, I love Americans, and I know Americans like to talk, and they like to go, oh, you know,
you're a good American.
Yeah, just with their wrong accent, and you just go, you know, like, oh, geez, I was at this book launch and it was fantastic, and he's written this book, and da da da. I'll tell everybody across the whole ship and plane, and hopefully it goes somewhere, you know.
What themes or messages do you hope readers will take away from Fountain of Diamonds?
That everybody has character flaws, that even people who you think are doing the right thing, often you just got to look deeper, that government in particular, as we've experienced time and time again, hold individuals and private enterprise and other corporations to a much higher standard than they hold themselves. And at the beginning of the book it talks about PFAS, you know. Here we've got the thing going on here in Williamtown, and our government's fought tooth and nail against the landowners and people involved in that. I mean, you know, you run a dodgy protest and the government's all over you with new legislation, right? For themselves, you know, just disgraceful behaviour. So that's something that really annoys me about, and something that's driven home in the book. And also, you know, people tell you, so I have a shot, you know, at some parts of things to do with, you know, the American immigration system. They say I have a big shot at the French. But there's also a scene in the book where, you know, the guy who's interrogating Robert Tate, you know, brings to the fore some of the disgraceful things the Australian government's done overseas, you know, where he tries to pretend our ASIO ain't any good as Mossad or your CIA or your DGSE. Well, no, we've done some pretty dirty things ourselves. So bringing that to the fore, and the fact that even when somebody at the end pretends they're going to set things right, when you've got wealth, even if you're this strong-willed character, you might give some of it away, but you'll never give it all away. No.